Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is October 28th, and right now we are looking at the infrared satellite imagery. You can see the Pacific Ocean here, BC, Washington, Oregon. Here goes our system sagging south and weakening this morning across the area. Our next system lies out here, a nice slug of moisture headed towards the Pacific Northwest. Another atmospheric river coming in, another beneficial atmospheric river, I should also point out as well. We'll take a look at the extended forecast as well. It looks like we have some bouts of cold air moving across the region, or I should say cooler air, and it's mainly going to be a good snowmaker for some of the areas, the higher terrain across the region. We'll take a look at that in some detail here in a moment. Looking at Seattle yesterday, 59 degrees, a little bit above average, that warm air out ahead of that system. Precipitation values will show up in tomorrow's run here. Now taking a look at the CoCoRaHS, look at southwest BC, some nice totals up over 2 inches. Washington coast, the rainforest out there up over 2 inches as well. Most areas between a quarter and an inch, as you can see these blue dots, but some areas getting up over an inch in these yellow dots as well. And you can see the front is sagging south as we go, but it is weakening, so precipitation values are going to be lower the further you get south. Now taking a look at the wind gusts yesterday across Whidbey Island up towards Bellingham, there were some scattered power outages, like some pretty good gusts across the region here. And of course, they got weaker as you went south, some low 30s around the central and southern Puget Sound there and some of the Washington coastline. Also, look at this day 3 excessive rainfall outlook. They did include us, and that now comes for the northwest slopes of the Cascades, mainly central Cascades north and the Olympic Mountains. This would include Vancouver Island and places of southwest and western BC here as well. And this is mainly, again, for the burn scar areas. They talk about some areas maybe even getting 4 or 5 plus inches on the highest peak. So it's worth watching for any burn scar areas right now. But this is helping to really kick the drought out of our region here, especially west of the Cascades. So mostly beneficial at this time. This is looking at the European yesterday afternoon's run. You can see this, the frontal system sagging south and weakening as it crosses into Oregon here. And then now we go on into Saturday evening here. Western BC impacted strongly by this atmospheric river as we go on into Sunday morning, taking its sweet time to sag south. And initially the Puget Sound will be rain shadowed here. We'll take a look at that in a little more detail here coming up. And then you can see this frontal system sag south, but this issue here is that we're into Halloween. We could be dragging a strong frontal system across the Puget Sound. The GFS has it a little bit further south, but somewhere between Seattle and Portland, it's probably going to be some pretty good rain falling as the trick-or-treaters are out there doing their thing. Then the cooler air moves in behind this, and we could bring some lower snow levels all the way down to the hilltops of the lowlands with this cooler air here, and some interesting looking convergent zones going across the Puget Sound as well. Maybe a little bit of small hail or even some snowflakes, like I said, on the higher hills. Now that colder air moves through. Then we point another atmospheric river at the Pacific Northwest, bringing some warm air in, and then some colder air behind that system as well as we go through the 10-day period on the European here. So interesting weather coming up here, folks. Looking at the European on the left, GFS on the right. Pretty good model agreement overall. You see that polar lobe kind of hanging north over BC here and casting this atmospheric river as we go through the day. Monday here, colder air moves in behind it. Pretty good agreement here on the trough hanging up over the Pacific Northwest. Transient ridge here, and then another polar lobe keeping that trough open off the west coast of North America. So pretty good model agreement. We're going to remain active here through the extended, but these individual systems, you know, we'll just have to watch them as we get closer to the event. We're out over 10 days here, so getting a little bit ahead of ourselves there. Now this is 2,500 foot temperature here. You can see the warm air from this atmospheric river kind of moving through the region here. Then the cooler air behind it settles over the area. Now, as we go on into Saturday and Sunday, you notice this warmer air start to show up here with this next atmospheric river. And you see the heating coming off the Olympics here. So you can imagine the air flowing over the Olympic Mountains coming down the other side. And as the air comes down, it compresses and heats and warms. It's going to cause some rain shadowing issues initially across the Puget Sound. You can really see those temperatures increase here at about the 2,500 foot level across Whidbey Island, Port Townsend, Sequim out there as well. And then you'll notice that the front slides south, that cooler air moves into the region. Look at this. We really start to get chilly just off the surface here as we go on into Wednesday morning. Look at this, some pretty cold air. If you're getting convective showers associated with that, you could drag the snow level down pretty far. I don't know if it'll get down to surface, but some of the hills could get some snowflakes or some small hail from some of these showers moving around the Puget Sound at this time as we go on into Wednesday morning. And then as we go into the following week, we can look at the temperatures warm up again here as the next atmospheric river would take aim at the Pacific Northwest. And again, cold air behind that comes down across the region, 10-day period here on the European. Now looking at the European accumulated 10-meter wind gusts here coming up. So this is looking at the next system. It's going to be windy in pretty much the same area as it was yesterday, but just a hair less, just a kind of a notch down from yesterday's windstorm, as we had some 50s across Whidbey Island. Doesn't look like 50s, maybe some upper 40s coming across the region here, and maybe a gust towards in the 30s probably for the Seattle area down towards Olympia as well. Oregon coast a little bit breezy also, but not too big of a deal. Not a big windstorm coming through here. Now this is looking at the system that moved through last night, weakening as it goes down towards Oregon. Now watch the precip really start to come into Vancouver Island and BC, Washington coast, but we get rain shadowed here across the Puget Sound. It's hung up here. It's taking its sweet time. The rain shadow exists all the way until Monday morning. Then the frontal system slides south and starts to bring some more moderate rain into the Puget Sound down towards Portland. And the timing on this, everybody wants to know for Halloween trick-or-treaters. It could be hung up over Seattle. GFS has it a little bit further south. So we'll continue to watch that as we get a little bit closer. We have a few days to work out those details. Now taking a look here, this is 100-meter wind speed. You can see the system kind of sliding down the coastline and weakening this morning. Here comes the next system here. Some pretty good southeasterly winds across the region Sunday morning. You can see that frontal system kind of bouncing around here right off the coast of northwest Washington, bringing some gusty conditions. But again, nothing too crazy. Maybe a few nuisance power outages at best. And then you can see the frontal system come down across the region here. Now as we go on into Tuesday morning here, watch as we go into Tuesday night. You can see some southerlies running into some northerlies and some westerlies coming down. This could be convergent zone activity across the Puget Sound here. And with a very cold air aloft, you could see the snow level come down to the hilltops, or maybe even a convective shower, some small hail, and a very outside chance of a lightning strike as this convergent zone kind of slides into the Puget Sound area as we go through Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. We'll watch those details closely. We're not going to get too caught up in that forecast just yet. Now looking at total precipitation inches. I've just run this out 10 days here, and you can see the precipitation amounts we're scheduled to get. Central Cascades north through the coastal range of BC, Vancouver Island, Olympic Mountains, even down through the Puget Sound. Some pretty good amounts showing up here through the Willamette Valley, even coastal range, and there's some beneficial rain all the way down through California. But you can see that big time rain shadow there for eastern Washington, eastern Oregon. Not much help for those places out there, but the higher terrain does get some meaningful precip, and you can kind of see the highlight of that rain shadow through some of eastern British Columbia there as well. Now looking at 850 millibars, 5,000 feet, just kind of an overlook on that warm air moving in here as we go through the day Sunday, and then sliding south and the cooler air settling over the region here. Just wanted to give you guys a visualization on a wider view here. And that air kind of tries to sag down south into BC a little bit here. Next atmospheric river comes, and then colder air behind that as well. And you can see colder air sagging down all the way down into British Columbia here as we go over the 10-day period here. So a couple shots of cool air are possible here. This will really help to build up some of the snow across the higher elevations as well as we go on in towards next week. Now looking at Whistler, you can see typical Cascade snow stuff here. You go below freezing and above, and below freezing and above. Back and forth, you get this snowfall, melting, refreezing, snow on top of that. So we get all kinds of dynamic layers, and our snow is usually pretty heavy moisture content. This is looking at Mount Baker. You can see the warmer air, the atmospheric river passing through here, and then the colder air behind it, bringing that snow level well down to the pass level. Going to build up some snowfall here across the Mount Baker area. Then another one comes through here and probably get some melting and some refreezing once the colder air behind that one comes. So Cascade concrete will be building across some of the areas here. This is looking at Boise here. You can see the warmer air as this atmospheric river moves through, then the crash and the colder air arrives here. Looks like about Tuesday afternoon, and some of the higher terrain areas out there could start to look at some snowfall as well across places like portions of Idaho. This is Klamath Falls. You are at 4,000 feet here, so you can see as you go down for this cold air crash here as we go on into early mid next week, you may even be below freezing at times up there, and some measurable snowfall not out of the question here. Then another warm up, then maybe some more cold air behind that. Now taking a look at Klamath Falls also right here, you can see some of the ensemble members do show a bit of snow falling. It's not going to be a big system or anything like that, but just kind of that time of year where you start getting your first measurable snowfalls out there, and maybe a little bit of a signal through the extended as well. But looking here, Whidbey Island, you can see these wind speeds are a notch below what was going on yesterday. There was some low 50s out there, probably not headed for that as we go through Sunday on in through Monday with these wind speeds coming up. Seattle, you can see just blustery, maybe some winds up towards the low 30s again, pretty similar to what we just got. This is looking at Seattle, Tacoma. You can see that cooler air aloft here kind of come down as we go through Monday night to Tuesday morning. And then we start to flirt with maybe some higher hilltop snowfalls as we go through here. A convective shower would punch up in here over 5,000 feet. So you could see probably closer to 10,000 feet actually. So it would be tapping some cooler air and maybe even producing some smaller hail as this Puget Sound convergence zone goes through the area. So maybe some higher hills would see a little bit of this hail accumulate. Who knows? We'll again, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. I can't help myself. So we'll watch that as we get closer. This is looking at Seattle, Tacoma, even a little bit of ensemble members showing up for some measurable snow. You can pretty much throw this out for now, though. Now, looking here, this is snow depth. So let's take a look at the little buildup as we get some cold air as we go through the day today. And then you can kind of see that lower level snowpack erode a bit here as we go through Monday. And then it starts to build again here just at the end of the 90-hour period here on the European. So you can kind of see the fluctuation here, but still not a lot of snowpack up across the Cascades, Oregon, and southern Washington as well. The North Cascades are doing better as we speak right now, and up through British Columbia, of course. That's going to change, though, probably here in the next couple of weeks, and we'll look at that here in a moment. Now, looking here, the European, this is last night's run here. You can kind of see the erosion of that snowpack at the lower levels, mainly here as we go through Halloween into the afternoon of Halloween here. Now taking a look, this is total snow, what we're expecting here for the next 10 days here. You can see that nice snowfall occurring across some of the region here, mainly as we get towards next week. That's when this colder air really gets introduced across the region here. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then behind that next atmospheric river, it looks like some more cold air and some more snow building up across the Cascades. So hopefully these a couple of blasts of cold air will really start to build up the snowpack across some of the higher terrain. And you can see this occur here as well, off through Idaho, Montana, western Wyoming here. Also, you can see maybe a little skiff of snowfall. You might see some snowflakes through one of those systems here across some of the valley there through Idaho. Now, looking at the precipitable water, let's take a look at our atmospheric river now. You can see this thing really kind of skinny and dying as it goes down the Oregon coast here. But here goes our next slug of moisture heading for the Pacific Northwest. You'll notice this thing is much more substantial. Not much more, but more substantial than the last. You can see it bouncing around southwest BC and Washington here, as then it starts to weaken and slide down the coastline again, similar to the last one, but should be a little bit more of a precipitation maker. It's going to train over the Olympic Mountains in southwest BC, Vancouver Island for a while there. As you can kind of see that, I'll replay it again. You can see that just kind of hang out there and then slide down. And then the colder air come across the region early next week. Now looking, no landslide problems coming up here. I suspect this would be higher if you were to look up through southwest BC, though. So after this next atmospheric curve, there might even be a little bit of that landslide issue for some of the areas through Vancouver. We'll see what the precipitation values are like. Look at the 6 to 10 day period. Even California getting in on the action here. A nice signal for them below average temperatures coming up. This is through November 6th. This 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook, nothing changing here for the west. 8 to 14 day, kind of showing that potential for some cooler air moving in through the Pacific Northwest on early November. 8 to 14 day, nothing changed there. Nice bullseye. This is looking at that atmospheric river here. Just barely qualified, the one that just passed. So this one is going to be a little bit longer duration. This is northwest Washington coastline here, Vancouver Island, and this would point towards southwest BC as well. This would be A here, the one that just passed, and B, again, a little bit longer of a duration and a little bit more of a vapor transport into the region here. So again, this is beneficial, nothing to be worried about. We're not dealing with any huge problems with the atmospheric rivers. I know a lot of people are still dealing with some issues with last year's atmospheric rivers. We're not looking at anything like that yet. I'll sound the alarm well in advance before something like that heads our way. So anyway, yeah, hope you guys are enjoying the rainfall. We're actually going to get a little bit of a break before this next system gets here for the Puget Sound and for Portland. But on Saturday, the precip's really going to start kicking up across western BC. We're going to have our typical rain-shadowed areas. Puget Sound is going to be rain-shadowed initially until we get towards Sunday evening, at nighttime probably. And then a frontal system is going to be hung up somewhere between Seattle and Portland as we go through the day on Halloween. So we'll continue to watch that and see which area is going to be dealing with the rainfall as the trick-or-treaters are out. We'll also look into next week's system as well, as we got some cold air coming down, potential for Puget Sound convergence zone, and some snow building up across the higher terrain. So anyway, hope you guys are liking these videos. Click like and subscribe, turn your notifications on, tell your friends. You guys are making this page grow every day. Welcome all my new members. I appreciate you very much, and we will do this again tomorrow. I'll talk to you then.